Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Collegiate Star League. How are you doing today, Joe?
I am doing excellent. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Joe, this is the finals. This is it. The last day all the players have been playing for this very moment. And I could not be happier with the Final Four. This is straight out of a movie, Joe. Like, these teams, the way that they came here is all so different. Every single one of these teams has such a unique identity and play style in the way that they've played out their strategies for the Collegiate Star League.
Yeah, it's super exciting to look at. I mean, it seems like in our bracket, we kind of have the teams with the deep depth, and then the teams like your RPI, whose strategy is basically Jon Snow. And just having that rock solid, totally undefeatable player. And it's really cool to watch them clash. The deeper in you get, the more kind of lineup strategies you get to see, and the higher stakes the matches become. I mean, this is $10,000 on the line for this tournament.
Oh yeah, it's nothing to sniff at. And just to break this down for you guys, we have our 4 teams. Our first 2 teams that are going to be playing today are Temple University and RPI. Now, Temple University is a powerhouse in the sense that they have star players. They have multiple star players in the form of Suppy and Tesla. They have a couple other also very skilled and talented players. They are probably the most well-rounded team that exists in the Collegiate Star League entirely. That is their powerhouse. They are the runner-ups from the previous years. And RPI is the exact opposite. They are the polar opposite because they have one star player, but he is the star player, Joe. He is Jon Snow, and he is undefeated outside of one map that he has lost to Turkey Dano. Jon Snow has only dropped a single map in this entire season, the CSL, to Turkey Dano, the Cannon Rusher, and that was a very unique game, and he kind of reclaimed his honor by defeating Printf twice a little bit later on in the season. But Jon Snow is such a different approach where he is supported by some teammates, but he is the ace versus Temple, who has this kind of more well-rounded team.
Yeah, they're a super strong, super solid team, Temple, that is. And I think they're going to show that off to us, probably quite a bit. I mean, our first match is actually going to be Tesla versus Jon Snow, and this is such an exciting match to me because Jon Snow is obviously the favorite. He's a higher caliber player than Tesla, but Tesla can win. This is not an unsurmountable mountain for him to climb, and I'm super excited to see what he can pull off here in this first map. He's a tricky guy, and I imagine going up against a player like Jon Snow with the stakes this high, he's going to have a really specific game plan. He's going to have done some studying, and he's going to pull out whatever he thinks has the best chance at killing Jon Snow.
Yeah, and I like the way that you're describing this. This is a game that is going to favor Jon Snow, but Tesla is, in a lot of ways, the opposite of Jon Snow as well. Jon Snow is so scary of a player. The thing that makes him the star player of the entire Collegiate Star League is that not only is he so good, he's so consistent. He does not lose games to people worse than him, almost ever. But Tesla is the polar opposite once again. He is the player that has the highest of highs and some of the lowest of lows. He is a very inconsistent player, but sometimes that inconsistency can be a good thing because you can defeat players that you are not favored against at all, that a lot of people will just dismiss you for. And Tesla definitely has the capability of defeating Jon Snow with that kind of mentality and with those kind of things that you were talking about, that strategy and preparation. But it is going to be, the onus is on him to try and make an upset here.
Yeah, and it's just a best of one. And when you're such a volatile player and you're able to make things happen, a best of one can often be the perfect format for that. There's a lot of tricks you can do. The first map is going to be Acid Planet, so I don't know how much it favors itself towards anything totally off the wall, but I imagine, the players have all this information available in advance. They know what map they're going to play on. There's no draft ban phase here, and that can just lead itself to getting more and more specific. And I really think if Tesla wants to take this first map, it's going to come down to the specificity of whatever he's doing.
Yeah, and just to talk about this series and kind of contextualize this first map, this is a best of 5. For those who are not familiar with the Collegiate Star League or unsure of how the format for the playoffs are, both the semifinals and the finals are going to be best of 5. But the way that I think a lot of people have mapped this out, including RPI, is that Jon Snow is expected, although it's not a 100% lock-in, but I would say maybe a 75 or 80% lock-in. Jon Snow is going to take the first map. And then the second map, I think a lot of people are expecting, is going to go to Suppy, who's facing off versus Spaceman. Suppy, I don't think he needs any introduction. He is inarguably one of the most successful collegiate players in esports in general, not even just in StarCraft. But then it comes down to the 2v2 and the final 4v or the 1v1 for game number 4, because those are the big question marks. And if RPI can bring it to the ace match, RPI feels so confident about their victory. But if Temple can lock down both the 2v2 and game 4, or pull off an upset in game number 1 here with Tesla, that is their path to victory.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it almost seems like Temple has more paths to victory than RPI. They can kind of win things. If Tesla takes out Jon Snow, it puts him in a super favorable position here. There's always a chance. I mean, they do have Suppy available to play an ace. Suppy could do it at the end. Tesla could do it at the beginning. There's a lot of paths to victory. RPI, I feel like if Jon Snow drops a single map, they're suddenly in a lot of trouble. And there's a lot of players between Tesla and Suppy that could kill Jon Snow depending on how far the series goes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Jon Snow is not 100% infallible, but he is going to still be heavily favored here. So it is also an interesting choice from Temple that I feel like they kind of hedged their bets a little bit, to be entirely honest. Temple decided to send out Tesla for game number 1. Totally fine. But Tesla's also coming out in the 2v2. Suppy, and for those who are not familiar, this is all going to relate to the fact that Collegiate Star League has a rule where a player cannot come out more than 2 times during a best of 5. So Tesla, who's coming out in the 1v1 and the 2v2, cannot come out in the ace match. Suppy is only coming out in one of the 1v1s. He's not coming out in the 2v2. So they're kind of saving him for that ace match. But I almost would have liked if Temple had doubled down on that 2v2, sent out something super powerful like a Tesla and a Suppy in the 2v2 and just said, we're going all in on this because we know you're going to have to save Jon Snow for an ace match. That's your path to victory. So I do feel like there's maybe some missed opportunities there, but Temple feels confident about their plan. We're going to find out how it's going to play out.
Spawning here in the bottom right-hand corner, playing for Temple is the red Protoss player, Tesla.
Oh boy. Already counting that money, but needs to be a little bit careful about how fast he's counting, because up here on the top left, we have our blue Zerg player. It is Jon Snow from Team RPI.
Jon Snow is cool as a cucumber. Nothing phases him, not even Tesla, who has some brutal dirty talk, or dirty smash talk. What am I?
He's a very rambunctious guy, Tesla.
Rambunctious. But yeah, Jon Snow totally unfazed, saying cool. I think he's coming in here, opening with actually a pool first, or pool after gas rather. Just playing things a little bit safe, or maybe looking to get into a bit of that aggression here.
I do think that it is a little bit more of the aggression. There may be some safety play here just because Tesla is not afraid to throw out some of his own cheeses, his own weirdness. But Jon Snow is also a player that loves to get in his opponent's face. And I think this is the sign of a really, really talented player, is that if you know that you are slightly better, the sooner that you have units and things that allow you to put pressure on your opponent, the sooner that you can cause them to crumble, and the less chances they have to do something tricky or to throw you off your game, because you're throwing them off their game. You're not giving them the space to create an odd situation to upset you.
Yes, indeed. Well, Jon Snow taking that natural base here is going to be getting those first couple of lings out back on the other side of the map. Tesla's taking his own natural. He's continuing to get a bit of a wall up. Jon Snow's a guy that is not afraid to run by you 1,000 times. So I do like, getting that wall up, making sure you are secure here. And Tesla is going to scout and see the timing on this speed, which should give him an indication. There might be an attack coming.
Ooh. Nice type up on that probe, by the way, in the main mineral line as Tesla tried to move in there. The most important thing is that Tesla was scouting how many lings were being made. So he saw 4 lings, and then I think he saw 2 more. I think he saw then the queen popping out. So it's going to feel probably a little bit better about this because he already has that adept out. And he should know, okay, I'm not going to have to worry about 8 lings coming out, trying to depower my front pylon and just shutting me down.
Yeah, he does have the Adept out at the front too, which can be used defensively. A bit vulnerable, can get surrounded, but ooh, Jon Snow actually adding on another 6 lings. So there is going to be a bit of pressure coming. It's going to be timed out to attack when that speed finishes. And back on the other side of the map, Tesla, his Twilight Council's finishing up, and he's adding on a Robo behind this on a very low gateway count. You think this could be for Archon drops?
Oh, I do think that this is going to be for Archon drops. So I'm not sure we're going to get to see it, Joe, because you mentioned all these lings that are being made. This is an identification from Jon Snow saying, you're cutting the shield battery. You only have 1 pylon at the front. You can't do this. This is not how you can play versus a player like me. I'm going to punish you for this. And this is exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, these probes do come off the line. They find an okay position to fight with that Adept hold up against the wall, but this is going to get really dicey really quickly. More probes coming in from the main, and Tesla may have the firepower with all these workers to clean this up, but not without withstanding terrific losses.
Oh, these losses are already devastating, and he knows that GG gets called. Jon Snow takes the first game, and exactly the way we were talking about, Joe, it is the ability of the better player or a perceived better player. When they're putting on the pressure, you just don't give your opponent opportunities. And that's exactly what Jon Snow did. He put on that early pressure with all of those ling floods. By having that overlord there and having the pool first and having the really quick speed upgrade, he was able to say, Tesla, you're cutting a corner. You can't cut corners versus me. I'm not going to let it happen. So he gets aggressive, and that's how he locks in the first game. Simple and clean.
Yeah, so that was... Tesla just told me that went as planned.
Yeah.
So perhaps a bit of knowing that you might, when you're going up against a player like Jon Snow, it's a tough mountain to climb. Tesla, it looked like maybe he had something cool and tricky up his sleeve, but didn't able to quite make it pan out here. Coming up next is actually going to be Suppy versus Spaceman. Mm-hmm. And I think this match is going to be a bit favored in Temple's direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Suppy is a world-renowned player, and I don't just mean, in the span of North America. I mean, he is legitimately world-renowned as a StarCraft player. He has traveled the globe and competed, and of course, he is now living that good old married life and very busy with that's kind of med school plans and everything else. So he has kind of taken a step back in StarCraft, but he still has it in him. He still is able to bust it out, and that is what makes him a scary player versus someone like Spaceman, who I would say has shown his worth and his value for Team RPI and helping Jon Snow locking down a lot of those RPI wins, but he still is going to have a very difficult time upsetting a Titan like Suppy.
Absolutely. So Suppy and Spaceman in this lobby, I do think we're going to be getting ready to go to our next game pretty quickly here.
Yeah, Violet Square is going to be that next map for this Zerg versus Zerg, and this is another difficult thing, Joe, is that playing a ZVZ versus someone like Suppy, ZVZ is one of the matchups that I do feel like if you are slightly outclassed, the difference shows very, very quickly. It's a matchup where sometimes you can get a little bit, I don't want to say lucky, because I feel like it's the wrong implication. It's not about luck. It's about sometimes making really smart strategic choices. You can overcome a bit of a skill differential. But overall, ZVZ, I feel like, is a very difficult matchup a lot of the time to upset someone better than you.
Yeah, basically, your hope is probably to have some kind of crazy aggression and really catch them off guard. And we have seen some clever builds that kind of hide how aggressive they're being in the CSL. Things like fake naturals when you're going up against a player that's just kind of a degree or 10 better than you.
An infamous match indeed in the CSL.
And I'm curious if we're going to see any of that, because spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner, playing for Temple, it is the Red Zerg player, Suppy. And his opponent in the top left-hand corner, playing for RPI, it is Spaceman.
Now, Spaceman's in the chat, or was in the chat earlier, I should say, saying that I was doubting him. And I hope that I can say after all of this that I was wrong and that Spaceman is going to be able to bust out some crazy awesome play versus Suppy. Suppy, though, as much as he has been busy, he has been grinding it out on that NA ladder for the past 2 weeks. He has been getting back in form. And that's something that I know, Joe, you run a tournament that is one of the places where Suppy gets the most motivated to play. And you've seen firsthand what Suppy can do when he has 2 weeks to prepare for a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Suppy won one of the Cheesadelphias. He took second in another. When you're a player of that caliber, I feel like in a lot of ways, you're riding a bicycle, you know? You might be rusty at first, you might look a little bit wobbly, but give yourself 20 minutes and you can just be back in action with, you know, not a lot of difference in level of play. And for someone like Suppy, who's just, I mean, this is a guy that played in the World Championship back in the day, was one of the only players to be making it into Premier League back when all the Koreans were taking over America. He can get back there really quickly, and it's going to be tough for Spaceman. I'm really curious to see what his move is, because you've got to have a move, right? That's how you try to get the edge in a ZVZ like this.
Yeah, and it's definitely not to take anything away from Spaceman. Again, he is a pretty solid player, and he has definitely shown his worth in the CSL over the course of the season. Jon Snow, as much as the CSL, we like to talk about how Jon Snow and RPI he's the star player and he's the one carrying them on to victory. It is a team league. You cannot win with just one player winning and none of the rest of your teammates winning. He needs to have that supporting backup, and a lot of the time Spaceman is that supporting player alongside a couple of the other players in RPI.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Spaceman does have going for him is he has Jon Snow on his team, and he can say, hey, what's Suppy doing on ladder? How can I beat it? What are some cool things I can do? And you get access to a lot of that knowledge. I mean, having someone of Jon Snow's caliber that plays the same race as you is a really helpful resource, and you know everyone's going to be taking it seriously, because I think $4 grand prize, that's a lot of textbooks in the hobby.
Very interesting little move here from Suppy. He moves out with some lings, and I don't think he saw any of his opponent's lings just yet. He hasn't really scouted into the natural or anything, but he moves out with the lings underneath the Overlord and then just pulls back. I wonder if he's trying to fake a little bit of aggression there, just kind of throw his opponent for a small little loop, but there are a decent number of lings that were already made for Spaceman, so now he's got to do something with them.
Yeah, Spaceman actually moving across the map here. Suppy's a bit out of position because he was going for a run by of his own. This is a high Baneling count. Suppy does get a glimpse of it here, and he does have 2 queens to help defend this. Immediately fires up another round of Zerglings to help defend this attack, but he's got to hang on against Banelings for now.
Yeah, Suppy had a lot of units coming out in production, but they're only just now popping, and his Banelings are a lot later than Spaceman's, which are now swarming on forward. 4 Banelings still remain, even after one of them goes down. The drone's being pulled off the line. Suppy is losing a lot of his lings, but he is able to clean up all the Banelings with only 2 drone losses so far.
Yeah, that was a really well done defense by Suppy, and he is going to have Banelings of his own if there's another attack wave, but he's not going to sit back and wait to be attacked. He's actually moving out onto the map, going to get a bit aggressive with his units, knowing that he cleaned up the army of his opponent, and potentially going to be looking to get a snipe on this third.
I think he actually needs to. Spaceman did a really, really well done attack. Even if he didn't kill off a lot of workers, he killed off a lot of lings, forced out a lot of lings, and he was able to drone behind it. He's still up in workers, and his third base is finishing up substantially ahead of Suppy's. So Suppy really needs to get some damage done here, at least being able to force out more units and taking some cost-efficient trades. That's an okay trade for Suppy.
Yeah, the Banelings do crash off, but there's 1 Baneling remaining from Spaceman here. Suppy winning these Ling Wars, but 1 Baneling could clean this up.
Oh, and the Baneling goes down, and now Suppy has free access to that hatchery. Once again, he's trying to stutter step around the hatchery, ring around the rosy, pocket full of Posey, ashes to ashes. The hatchery comes down, and Suppy is going to feel very good about that kind of victory.
Yeah, now Suppy can go back. His own third going to be significantly ahead of his opponents now that that's been reset. Just finishing up now, and it looks like Spaceman going for that Roach Warren and layer behind this. Is this an all-in attack, like a Hail Mary?
You know, I don't, it's kind of difficult. Okay, those Banelings for Suppy were so key. Being able to clean up all those lings while he was on the other side of the map, still being aggressive with a superior number of lings, Suppy is getting even more damage. If it was an all-in, Joe, the all-in has failed at this point.
Indeed. I mean, at this point, Spaceman trying just to stay alive, absolutely struggling. sitting here on just 2 bases on Neon Violet Square, and Suppy is ravaging the mineral line of his opponent. A few more lings are going to pop out. This is maybe going to allow Spaceman to hang on for the moment, but Suppy is just dancing with these lings, and he's winning every single fight.
Yeah, and even when he has relatively even number of lings toward the beginning of those fights, he was getting slightly better advantages in kind of the concave. He was getting slightly better surface area in his opponent's lings. Just his movement and his control has been so on point. Spaceman put up a really valiant effort, and he legitimately did look like he was in a kind of favorable position a few times in this game. But Suppy is just able to turn things around with some really intelligent and well-controlled play.
Yeah, emergency roach is going to be coming out from Spaceman, but even with that inflated roach supply, he's still sitting at under half the supply of his opponent. I think that this is going to be tying the series up here. We would need to see some miracle Baneling hits and then a lot more to tie this game back up.
I mean, Suppy would have to have his own Banelings morph in and kill his own lings. Those kind of miracle Baneling hits would have to happen, Joe. And that's not a thing that happens in StarCraft. You can't kill your own lings with your own Banelings. So that's going to be it. GG. Temple ties it up 1-1.
I think that's a pretty kind of predictable place to get to this middle of the series as we prepare to get into our 2v2 match. Going in all tied up. That's going to make this match super critical for either team.
These next 2 matches are the most important matches of the entire best of 5, in my opinion. This 2v2, if this goes in the favor of RPI, they have guaranteed an ace match, and they're going to feel great about their chances sending out Jon Snow versus Suppy or anyone else that I imagine Temple would want to send out. Everyone's kind of assuming Suppy at this point, and of course everyone's also assuming Jon Snow coming out in game 5. So RPI's goal, win either the 2v2 or the next 1v1. Temple has to win these next 2 games or they are at a significant disadvantage.
Yeah, I do think that obviously Suppy against Jon Snow is favorable to Jon Snow, but Temple still definitely has a chance there. It's really going to be about what happens in this 2v2. I think Centaur Wa has shown himself to be a player that's pretty scary. He's beat players that are, of that kind of GM caliber that you don't see dropping a lot of maps in the CSL. He has these crazy, crazy, cheesy builds. But Tesla and Heartbeat, they're both really good players. They've shown a little bit of trouble kind of finding the science of the 2v2, and I am a bit worried for them going into this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this 2v2 shapes up. I also want to say that I know Jon Snow was a little bit more confident in this 2v2, maybe working out in the favor of RPI. Because again, I talked to Jon Snow beforehand and said, "What are you really thinking that you're going to probably most likely win the 2v2 or the game 4?" This is not to say that game 4, where Training Wheels are going to be playing for Team RPI, can't win versus Centaur Wa, but it is, I think, Jon Snow saying he feels a little more confident with the 2v2. So I'm interested to see where that is going to go. I think we're going to hop to a short little break before we get that next game or that next series started. So guys, don't go anywhere. You're watching the Collegiate Star League semifinals and finals.
Hello and welcome back to the CSL. We are here in our round of 4. The series is all tied up, and we're going into our critical 2v2 match on Shrines of Lazul.
Yep, this is going to be one of the most important matches because, again, it's going to determine whether or not RPI can guarantee at least getting to an ace match if they want to try and claim victory, or if Temple is going to be able to have an opportunity to lock things out before Jon Snow can come out a second time. It does seem like all the players are pretty much ready to go. I think only Spacemen or Spacemen is kind of saying, are you guys ready though? Because we're just getting a giant spam of ready in the chat. I think they're all antsy to get started, Joe.
Yeah, our countdown has started, and I am so excited for this map. Heartbeat and Tesla are both kind of cheeky players, and this is the cheekiest map on Earth. Shrines of Lazul. We're going to be spawning into it in a minute. We can talk about it more. But first, Ravi, we have to introduce our players. And spawning down here in the bottom left-hand corner playing for Temple, it is the red Protoss Tesla. And the orange Zerg player, Tugboat, also known as Heartbeat.
And we have up in the top side of the map our teal Zerg player. It's going to be Spaceman, as well as his teammate on the right-hand side of the map. It is our blue Terran T-Fang. And they're going to be representing RPI. And I want to give a shout-out to T-Fang specifically, because he was the one in the lobby that said, hey, you know what would be great? If for the casters and for the viewers, all the wonderful people watching, we could just have a red versus blue scenario where we have teal and blue versus red and orange. And just huge round of applause for T-Fang. He must be a designer. He must be doing some sort of art degree because he's got great sense right now.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier to follow, especially, I think, when you have the kind of two Zergs in the matchup. Lings can look pretty similar, especially if you have colors that don't clash with each other. But it's going to be super easy to follow all of these fights. And because this is Shrines of Lazul, there will be fights. They will come fast, and they will be furious.
All right, Tugboat already doing something kind of interesting. Now, he's not going for a hatch first, but he does go for a pool, then hatch, then gas. So his speed is going to be a lot later if he decides to go for it at all in this situation. You said this is a pretty cheeky map. This is a map that you can get pretty aggressive on, but funny enough, Spaceman goes for a really quick gold base and then goes for the gas geyser and then the spawning pool, really signaling that he wants to maybe not necessarily play a macro game, but he wants to at least get into the kind of early mid-game stage. And I feel like it's really T-Fang that's kind of signaling, I want to get aggressive with the multiple barracks producing those Reapers.
Yeah, and it looks like the first Reaper already on its way here. Tesla does not have any units out to deal with this. This is such a fast Reaper here. The Adepts are being chronoed out, but this could get really annoying really quickly.
Yeah, the Adepts are going to be very key. The nice thing is the Adepts are going to be able to eventually pick off these the Reaper very, very quickly, which is going to be important because he's going to be up against 3 Rex Reaper aggression. The number of Reapers is going to start scaling up very, very fast, but it's all about how he uses those Adept Shades, I think, to make sure he's always in position.
Yeah, and once you start to get 4, maybe 6 Adepts up, it's easier to split them up, have some on the high ground, some on the low ground, and you can make it harder for your opponent to bounce up and down here. He's actually chasing a bit, push these away, but once he sees the Lings, he knows he can't take that fight. And Tesla needs to be careful not to get caught here.
He's already somewhat caught, Joe. The Adept Shades are going to come out, but I think he's going to... He might lose one of the Reapers. Yeah, he does end up losing one of them. Other one managed to escape out alive, but again, this is about the fact that Tesla needs to make sure he has a growing number of Adepts that will just straight up overpower Lings and these Reapers.
Yeah, he is going to let some of these Lings into his base. They aren't really a threat yet without the Adepts, but Tugboat coming in with the Roach reinforcements, this is going to force those Lings to get into a more committed position here, and also going to help deal with these Reapers quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, up until this point, Tesla has been basically 1v2ing with the Reapers and the Lings on his side of the map, but now Tugboat coming in with those Roaches, like you said, but Tugboat might have to play a little bit of 1v2 as the Adepts take a while to get over here. He's going to lose most of his Roaches and even some of the health on these Queens in the meanwhile.
Yeah, now these Reapers are forced to run home, but they can run off and do some drugs, recover their health, and then pop back into this main base of Tesla, where the mineral line is actually very vulnerable. Only the slow Roaches of Tugboat to help deal with this.
Yeah, we're just seeing the mobility right now for Team RPI exploiting Temple's immobility. Adepts, great bulky units. Roaches, great bulky units. Both of those units very slow compared to Lings and Reapers.
Oh my god, if he loses this pylon, and it looks like he does, those gateways go completely unpowered. Tesla currently sitting on no production, just going to be banking that money up, even supply blocks.
But man, Tesla during all of this has been able to get out that Oracle, obliterates the economy of T-Fang, by the way. He's down to 11 workers, and that Oracle is now out of energy, but it can continue to harass. So he has taken a significant amount of damage in losing that production, but he's also done a lot of damage to his opponent.
Yeah, does lose that Artosis pylon once again here, but it looks like these Lings may actually be sandwiched by the Roaches. Actually, Ling's finding a nice position here to get on top of the Roaches without the fire support from the rest of that army, and that's going to make this fight a little bit easier. I think Spaceman and T-Fang are going to try to want to push here, but there's just too much firepower.
Oracle in T-Fang's main base. The Oracle is going ham once again. It's managed to kill off even more workers, and T-Fang's down to just 7 at this point. So his economy has been obliterated a second time. And the longer that this game goes on, the better of a situation I feel like Tesla and Tugboat are going to be in general, because they've been able to do damage to their opponent, who have these mobile units, but they aren't durable. As the growing number of units comes up, I feel like Tugboat and Tesla are going to have an easier and easier time defending against these counterattacks.
Yeah, and actually cleaning up a lot of these Lings, the Adepts getting on top of the Reapers. Good use of the Shades.
Tesla, your mineral line. These Lings, they're doing so much damage. Tesla down to just 9 workers, and his Oracles are still doing damage on the other side of the map, but he loses one of them to the Widower. He loses another to the Marines, and now he can still do a bit more damage to his Terran opponent, but it is a really rough spot regardless.
Yeah, it's going to be on Tugboat to try to make up some of that lost ground. His army count is rising. It's getting really powerful and scary compared to his opponents, who've really just been sitting on kind of these pressure units, these Lings, these Reapers that can't fight well straight up. But that Ling count is enormous.
Yeah, the Ling's doing quite a bit, and they're catching a lot of segmented off units, individual Queens, individual Roaches or Ravagers. He's doing a fantastic job of this kind of control in general, but he loses a lot of Lings on the, I guess, retreat there. And this is what I was talking about. Now, Tesla and Tugboat say, enough is enough. Let's go attack. And they really only have to worry about attacking Spacemen. And they have such a scary-looking army. What does Spacemen really have to defend?
Yeah, those Banelings are going to be looking to get some critical hits here to help soften up the army. Oracle's no longer harassing coming in for the fight, and Spaceman is trying to hold on, but this is a massive army out of Tesla and Tugboat.
Yeah, I honestly just do not know how you defend against an army like this, Joe. This is a little bit too strong, and Spaceman did a great job of all that harassment, but at the end of the day, he never really got up a critical number of drones to have the economy to then spur out more and more units and get up the necessary defenses. So he does a good job of kind of holding his own for a bit and continuing the harassment, but I think Tesla clearly knows that this game is going to go probably in favor of Temple.
Yeah, and that's so good for Temple here, not giving up that win for free. They're actually going to be moving up the ramp here, trying to open this door and knock it down. And, I mean, I don't know what, if anything, T-Fan and Spaceman can do to hang on. They're facing a combined 100 supply versus just 35.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, nice little counterattack over here with the Lings, but they will eventually get cleaned up. Even if they kill off a decent number of drones, the entire armies and the entire bases are gone at this point. Temple takes game number 3, brings themselves up 2-1 in this series.
Well done by them. That's going to put them in a really great spot, because our next match is going to be Centaur versus Training Wheels. And I don't know what level of play Training Wheels is at, but if he's not ready for whatever crazy thing Centaur does, he could get really caught off guard, because it's a TVP, and Centaur's shown us some off-the-walls stuff.
I could not agree more, Joe. This is a series that's currently has a lot of the momentum favoring Temple, and I legitimately do think that if RPI cannot take this game, I mean, well, it's obviously clear in the numbers that if RPI can't take this game, that they've lost 3-1. But if RPI can win this game 4, I strongly believe that they have heavy favoritism going into that ace match, with Jon Snow being able to be fielded most likely against Suppy. I really do think If game number 4 goes in the favor of RPI, they will most likely win this. If they lose game 4, they are obviously going to lose because that's how a best of 5 works, Joe.
Well, we're getting in. This is going to be on Catalyst. And that's a nice big map, long rush distances. So that's going to be, I think, probably favorable to the more standard player here.
Yeah, it's generally a pretty standard feeling map, a kind of more bland map in a lot of ways. But sometimes that is kind of what you want. We're going to be in this Terran versus Protoss. I think that it's, oh man, Centaur is one of those players that I do feel, you've mentioned this before. I feel like he's the player that has impressed me and left a bit more of an impression over Training Wheels. This is not to say Training Wheels is a bad player by any means, but I do just feel like I've seen a little bit more from Centaur, so I want to give a bit of favoritism to him.
Yeah, here is a fun fact about Centaur since we're in the CSL finals. So Centaur is actually a Chinese citizen. And because the last CSL finals were held in Canada, he could not get a visa, and they had to get their essentially team photographer to play to fill out their bracket, or their roster rather.
Huh, interesting. I did not know that. That's actually really, really cool. Well, Training Wheels he's got a lot on his plate to try and make this happen here. As for those who are also not familiar, Training Wheels going by the name Brilliant, it looks like, in the game. As they always like to change it up between the website and, of course, the in-game names.
Yeah, well, I think so. You're allowed to do that, but you do have to, when you mouse over on the website, if you're ever looking at one of these matches, because you can go look at the brackets, the players do have to put their in-game IDs, so you can see that. And I think, you know who Centaur beat? He beat Lamb Sauce last week.
Oh, Lamb Sauce is a really, really solid player. So
yeah,
that is definitely a good
GM.
showing.
He did it with it was some kind of super funky cyclone push that I think Lamb Sauce had never seen before and just straight up died to. And that's the kind of the flexibility of Terran, I think, lets a player that can be really smart but maybe not the most mechanically sound do some cool snipes in the early game.
All right. Well, looks like the players are ready to go, and we are ready to go as we hop onto Catalyst for this Terran versus Protoss. Joe, I feel like you've kind of hinted at it, but what are your predictions for this game?
I'm going to go with Centaur. I think it's going to be something crazy, something tech-heavy, maybe a 1-1-1 with, some unusual unit compositions, and I think his goal is just going to be to keep Brilliant, a.k.a. Training Wheels, off guard, off balance the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair prediction in this situation. So let's go ahead and jump in and introduce the players.
Spawning here in the top left-hand corner, playing for Temple. He wants to close out the series and bring his team to the finals. It is Centaur.
And his opponent spawning in the bottom right-hand side of the map. We have our red Protoss player. He is Brilliant.
Is he
representing RPI? He seems like a brilliant young lad. He's gonna go far in life.
All right, he is gonna be putting that gateway down in a kind of a weird spot.
So the reason for this is you want to try and block the Reaper from jumping up into your main base in TVP. What I think is really interesting is Centaur is placing his barracks in a really odd place.
This, didn't Bomber used to do this a lot? He would make it look like he was just doing a normal barracks expand, and he'd hide one behind his natural mineral line. And then you'd be like, oh, this seems like more units than one barracks can produce at this point in the game.
Yeah, what's also really interesting is the fact that he proxies the barracks. Okay, so I think I see what Centaur was doing. He proxies the barracks, hoping that the probe will come in and scout the double gas geyser, which looks a lot like, oh, your proxy factory, like cyclone or reactor cyclones, or maybe you're going for a 1-1-1 proxy opening. But the barracks is at home. The factory is going to come. Okay, the factory is going to come down to his main base. I'm actually not sure what the purpose is of this anymore. I guess it could look. No, there's no. I don't think that you need two gas geysers to go for like the proxy, just a single proxy Reaper, and multi-proxy Reaper isn't really that big of a thing in PvT.
whatever it is, it's gonna get scouted.
Yeah.
Because he is gonna see that Marine. And he is gonna be blocking this top here. I wonder if Centaur was maybe gotten the sense that something weird is going on here. He doesn't really have any scouting, but there is a proxy gateway coming in here.
Yeah, the only thing that he's really witnessed is that, and I don't really see a nexus with that SCV that's patrolling behind his opponent's natural expansion mineral line, but yeah, the proxy gateway is going to have a potential to do a lot of damage. The Stalker's going to be rallied across the map. There's no fear of a Reaper either, because he saw that barracks at the natural kind of floating back over to the main base. So likely the timing for Reaper is already gone by that point. So the Stalkers don't have to worry about staying. He doesn't have to leave anything at home to deal with a Reaper. He just gets to go across the map and try and get aggressive.
Yeah, but I do like what Centaur's doing here. He's getting a Cyclone out, and that's going to be very helpful in dealing with the aggression that's incoming. It does look like behind this a Stargate as well. This is going to be all-out aggression by Brilliant. He has to do damage with this.
Okay, he's bringing the probe. The real question here, is he going to throw down the pylon at the natural, start making some void rays and turn this into... Okay, there's the pylon. Yes, he is going to be doing this. I imagine a lot of shield batteries going to be coming down behind or by that pylon in the natural. This allows the void ray the ability to poke in, get healed up by the shield batteries, and repeatedly just poke back and forth and do that chip damage to that wall.
Yeah, it's a really tough cheese to deal with here, and it looks like gonna get that second one up. Centaur does know what's coming. He's seen all the shield batteries.
Oh.
He needs to not get sniped by these stalkers.
Oh my god, he didn't know that this was coming until he had that medevac over the shield battery. So he loses the Cyclone for a single stalker, and the medevac is nearly dead. This is a terrible start for Centaur.
Yeah, absolutely here. He is going to have some time. Got some SCVs pre-pulled here. The Void Ray's not quite out yet. Centaur does actually have a Viking out, so he can maybe try to do some kiting of the Void Ray with that. He's not sitting on no anti-air capability, which is absolutely the worst case scenario you can be in here, but it is tough to get the correct setup. And we see that the competition he's going to be going for is getting tanks and Liberators out. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because the real threat comes from those Void Rays.
Yeah, the Void Rays really are a lot of the times the problem, but the Siege Tank is nice because you can put pressure on the shield batteries to push those back. Okay, Void Ray getting target fire down, but it's also getting healed up by one of the shield batteries. Second shield battery gonna be able to tap in as the first one runs out of energy. Some damage done, but it looks like high ground vision kind of lost. The Void Ray needs to move a little closer to that bunker.
Yeah, having the SCVs here is super helpful for Centaur. Having them pre-pulled means that we do still see that bunker standing. The tank gets some great shots off on these stalkers, draining those shield batteries very quickly here, and Centaur suddenly gaining a bit of momentum.
More than just a little bit, I would say. All the shield batteries are out of energy. They're barely able to slowly heal up that single Void Ray. Even the second Void Ray feels like it takes ages to actually get out. He wasn't able to take down the bunker. He didn't kill any units with that big push in either, Joe. He maybe killed a Cyclone and maybe a Marine or two. That's it. He's lost so much in the process.
Yeah, and now he's maybe looking for a different angle of attack, but he's not going to have those critical shield batteries when he goes for this fight here. The Viking, maybe a bit overextended, does fall to the Void Rays. They are going to have a chance to pull back here, but I mean, the firepower of Centaur just looks overwhelming at this stage.
I like the idea of going for the tech lab on the factory to slow things down, but he loses a Void Ray in the process because he's so far away from the shield batteries. A little bit of F2ing going on from Centaur-wise. He had an awesome Liberator move out across the map, but he pulls it back because he was actually F2ing his army for a moment. Liberator now moves back over to Brilliant side of the map. A single Stalker is here, so it should be taken care of, but should be able to get a couple of worker kills.
Yeah, and that means Brilliant's attention might be pulled away here. And at the same time, he's not attacking right now. Centaur's army getting bigger and bigger. 6 workers go down before that Liberator gets cleaned up. And Centaur is holding on one base very strongly.
Yeah, just the fact that the Void Ray count never built up has been the biggest problem, I think, for Brilliant. And also, I would say those Siege Tank shots, when the Stalkers were poking forward and they were all kind of just right in front of the shield batteries and the Siege Tanks was just wailing 5 or 6 shots away at the Stalkers, I do feel like that was probably the moment that Brilliant really lost a lot of any of the momentum he had going in his favor. And now all the shield batteries are cleaned up. This is not something that you really transition out of, Joe. This is something you have so much committed to.
Yeah, and Centaur dealing with it excellently here. Even going to move down. He's going to also want to clean up all that production. And I think he may be winning Temple this series as he moves out onto the map with this massive army.
Temple, runner-up for 2 seasons in a row of the CSL, are ready to move on to the finals and say, we are going to get it right this time. He's moving across the map, ready to do exactly what you said, Joe, to try and claim Temple, that victory in game number 4. Brilliant still has an army of these stalkers, a couple of these zealots, and he's got one final hope. He needs to crush this army, maybe leveraging that high ground position, getting those zealots in the front, but he's not quite at the ramp, so he's going to miss out on some of the opportunities for a better engagement angle. And the siege tanks are going to siege up, obliterating the zealots.
Yeah, even brought some SCVs along to help out with repairs and heals here. Gonna push those stalkers. Probably gonna have to go up the ramp. Is Brilliant here. And now he is the one that is contained. He's just desperately trying to hang on for that immortal and hope it can turn the tide.
Yeah, Oracle in the main base of Centaur while trying to get some damage on, but the missile turret is already finished up. He manages to kill off a couple of the workers mining gas, but what's he gonna do about the big push at the front, Joe?
Yeah, he needs to find a way to hold on if he wants his team to have this series. Gonna warp in his century. Medevacs are available, so not gonna be quite as helpful as if it was some kind of Zerg bust here. And actually, it's gonna go down only getting a single force field off most of the Marines in the base. I think this may be curtains for RPI in the CSL.
RPI, they so strongly believed in their ace, Jon Snow, but at the end of the day, we see that the all-star team, Temple, is going to move on to those grand finals.
Well done by them indeed. Really well done. They're going to get on to the finals here. And we do have another semifinal to determine who our final matchup is going to be coming up after this. I'm super excited for that one as well. It's Waterloo playing against Illinois.
University of Illinois. Yeah. Oh man, that is also such a fascinating match, Joe. I was talking about how all of these teams, they feel like they came straight out of some sports movie or something, where you had Temple with a radically different strategy and the way that they tried to play, or in terms of their player lineups, where Temple had a lot of these top tier players, whereas RPI had the top tier player. And now you have Waterloo versus Illinois. And let me tell you something, Joe. Waterloo, heavily favored going into that match. They are, and I don't say this to be mean to them, but they're kind of the bad guys in a lot of ways for these 4 teams in the semifinals. They're the team that's not afraid to be a little bit bad-mannered to their opponents. They throw out the dances, they throw out a little bit of the trash talk. They're a very well-rounded powerhouse team that everybody, regardless of what you think of their trash talk or anything, you have to respect the fact that they get results. They are a strong, well-rounded team with the Riddler and Buster and all the rest of them. And then you have University of Illinois. And Joe, in this movie, this documentary on whatever these sports baseball teams or boxers or whatever for StarCraft, Illinois, I'm telling you, are the protagonists. They are the scrappy ragtag group of individuals. They don't have any of the star players. They don't have any of these behemoths of the scene and that compete not just in the Collegiate Star League, but in esports and StarCraft esports in general. They are just a bunch of awesome people who have made their way over teams like Georgia Tech and like UC Irvine that have some pretty good players. And they're just these underdogs. These are the guys that you would be rooting for in that movie because you think it shouldn't be happening, but they're making it happen. How far can they go?
Yeah, they're playing one of the deepest, I would say actually maybe the deepest team. I think their entire lineup, Waterloo, is Grandmaster.
Yeah.
And so they've got a long way to go. I guess, it almost feels like Karate Kid versus Cobra Kai here.
Exactly. This is straight out of a movie, Joe, and everyone is going to be watching to see, can the miracle happen? Or will Waterloo, as logic dictates, should win this by every single stretch of imagination, every single number of points that Waterloo should dominate Illinois. But Illinois got here through some amazing hard work or miracles, whatever happened, they got to this point in the semifinals, and they want to go all the way, Joe. You can taste it at that point. You can taste that finals already. I want to see what happens, Joe. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think I'm just looking over the matchup again here. So Krillman is a super strong player. Easily their strongest player, right? And they've chosen to play him in the 2v2, which makes me think when they were sitting and plotting, Waterloo's a team that's hard to counterpick against because, like we talked about, just about anyone they throw out is going to be at that Grandmaster level. So I'm thinking they're saying, okay, instead of trying to counterpick them and go really hard, we're going to throw our strongest lineup out, and we're going to do it in the first 3, and we're going to try to close it out because Krillman can probably beat anyone on Waterloo. Arias, I'm not as familiar, but I believe is like a Masters player that would have to have like a really good plan or a spike in performance. And then the 2v2 is a little bit funky, right? Any player can lose a 2v2 to a well-timed build. So I think just the fact that they know they're not going to have Krillman available for Ace, their whole plan is going to rest on really closing things out in those first 3 maps.
Yeah, I actually think that I agree with a lot of what you said. I do think that the Riddler is probably that star ace player right now for Waterloo that I don't know if I would give Krillman to. I do think that Krillman has a chance versus the Riddler, but I do think it's going to be a lot lower than maybe Krillman facing off versus like a Yenfu or a Buster or a Locke or something. So I think you're right. The kind of strategery of who's facing off versus who is going to be a huge factor in how exactly Illinois was able to set this match up. And Krillman facing off versus the Riddler, I think in some ways, I want to kind of say that I like this a bit better for Waterloo in the fact that they get to say star player versus star player, and the Riddler is probably a bit favored. So Krillman, there's a lot of onus on him to really make something happen there. And like you said, I think the rest of the matches still going to favor Waterloo, but they can absolutely go in the favor of Illinois. And the 2v2 especially, I think, is going to be an important one for them.
Yeah, man, I'm just looking at this matchup, and Waterloo is so Terran heavy, and Illinois is super, super Zerg heavy. And,
yep.
You know, just based on kind of the style that Waterloo plays, that mech heavy style, that can be super tough to deal with. I think Buster, the Riddler, and I'm not sure about Sidus, all play that kind of slow, creeping, strangling mech style. And if you don't have a lot of practice, if that's not what you hit on the ladder, you've got to come up with a game plan. People can look like a fish out of water when you're dealing with that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's not something that everybody likes to do on their playstyle and on the ladder. And this is part of what I also feel like feeds a little bit into Waterloo's bad guy or like the villain persona, is that they play this. Not only do they do these kind of like small little bits of BM and everything, and I will say there are some lovely people on Waterloo. Like I've had many a friendly conversation with, for example, Buster. He's a really awesome guy, but I do think that like their playstyle also warrants a lot of people to dislike playing against them. It's a very slow and methodical and very, very taxing playstyle to play against because it takes so long to break through those kind of players, and you can feel like you're in a good position, but if you don't have an extreme amount of patience, things can fall apart very quickly, and you can give up those leads and allow your opponent back into the game. So I do feel like because that style is so, I would say, hated right now by a lot of people, it builds and feeds back into that kind of persona of Waterloo sort of being the big bad guys in this situation.
Well, we're going to be jumping over to a quick break before we go to that series. Once again, guys, it's going to be Waterloo versus the University of Illinois, and I'm going to be casting that with Zombie Grub, so don't miss it.